Please enjoy this feature presentation of the Crooked River Radio Network. This program is rated for all audiences.
The Nanosecond podcast is sponsored by CrookedRiverRadio.com. Crooked River Radio is an internet radio station that is live 24/7 playing rock and adult contemporary top 40 hits from the 60s through the 90s. You can find us on Live 365, Simple Radio, Roku, Radio Garden, and even Alexa, as well as our website. Come on and join us on the Crooked River.
Welcome to the Nanosecond podcast. With your hosts, Eric Nanarone, Nick Goglioni, and Pat Morrow. Eric, Nick, and Pat will be right with you.
Hello and welcome to the Nanosecond podcast. I'm Eric.
I am Nick.
And I'm Pat, I think. At least it was the last time I looked. And we have a guest tonight. Do we have a guest tonight, Eric?
Well, 1 second. You notice in the intro and in the us introducing ourselves, we got a new co-host, number one, Nick. How you doing?
I am fantastic, man. How about you?
I'm good. Okay. Without further ado, let's introduce Mike Chico Borman. How are you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing well, fellas. I apologize for being a little late there. I like the intro music, Don't Bring Me Down, because that's pretty much what I did at the start of this. So I'll try to rally for it, put it that way. But great being with you guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, we love having you.
Yep. Getting into the first topic, where do you think the Guardians will finish this year?
I certainly like their chances in the Central. I don't know why you wouldn't. Considering what happened last year and how well they did last year and the obstacles they overcame. I mean, guys, if we think about this, a year ago at this time, think about like what the opening day lineup was and then what it ended up being and what it's going to be, hopefully, barring injuries or anything unforeseen, this season. Like, you've only got two guys, I believe, that actually will be at their respective positions that ended the season last year at those positions. So, I mean, you had so much change. I mean, we're still going through the, Oscar Mercado and Bobby Bradley, and it's just, I know for myself, when they made that announcement last year, and I remember being on the air at the time, and I was being made fun of by those in studio because I was all excited that Stephen Kwan was going to get the start on opening day. And it wasn't because I heard good things about Kwan, much like we've seen. He's a contact hitter, average, and all that stuff. But it was more about, God, we've got to move on from the Bobby Bradleys and the Oscar Mercados. And, you've got to start playing these guys. Yeah, I think we had a good sample size of, all these other guys, the Mercados and Bradleys, et cetera, that it was good to see them move on. And to be honest with you, I was of the mindset that, look, if this season, meaning last season, was nothing more than we're going to get a feel, they're going to get a feel, more importantly, for, what the lineup is going to be, solidify some positions, great. Now, I wanted them to be competitive, but I don't know if anyone expected them to win the amount of games they won and, 90 plus and all the things that they did and had to juggle and, kind of these guys learning on the fly. So, I think the White Sox are going to be better this year. I think, obviously they're loaded with talent, but, we saw what happened last year, a change in manager, guys, they had a lot of injuries too. So, I mean, they're going to be tough, but I don't see at this point. I mean, the Guardians have questions. But I think many of the lineup questions that we certainly looked at last year, definitely not the case this year, and it's exciting. I mean, it's really exciting.
I got to tell you, I'm pretty excited about the Guardians myself. Thinking back to last year, you did all that with the youngest team in the whole flipping league. You don't have a player over 27 years old then. You know, you just can't wait in order to get into it this year. And I've got a lot of hope for them this year. I think they're going to do pretty well. I don't know if they're going to make this. I don't know that they'll make the series. Go ahead.
Yeah, you think? I mean, I don't know. Prediction wise, as far as I like them in the division. When you start talking about getting, if they're able to make the postseason, and we certainly believe they could and hopefully should. Once you get in there, you've got some really stacked teams. But I think, to your point, well, how many 16, 17 guys, whatever it was, that made their major league debut last year?
Yep.
And then to win that many games, I mean, it's a testament to, the guys that they have developed, and it's a serious testament to Terry Francona. And look, no manager's perfect. And I know in this town sometimes, you cut Terry Francona too much slack, or look, he's going to make mistakes like anybody else, but very few teams in Major League Baseball can say you not only have a great manager strategy-wise, but also is the heartbeat of your team. And make no mistake, Tito Francona is the heartbeat of the Cleveland Guardians, and you saw that last year big time.
I would just love him to give him a World Series. I would just.
That'd be nice.
I would just love that.
So I had heard an interview with Albert Bell, and he around the time they signed Josh Bell, and he compared Josh Bell to, and said that him and Josh Naylor are almost the same player. They just bat from the opposite sides. What do you think about that comparison?
I mean, Albert certainly knows a hell of a lot more than I do. I think, and nothing against Naylor, I think Naylor can be a 20 to 25 homer guy. You've seen a ceiling, or just how great Josh Bell can be a couple seasons back. When he was in Pittsburgh, I mean, he was putting up incredible numbers. And I think Naylor now, and I think this is now going to be, as they start to transition and you see guys solidify positions, Naylor can be your DH and mostly your DH, which I think, after that gruesome injury, him coming back, I think that's probably the best for him. I think you get more at bats for him. And then Josh Bell, he can play first base. He can play some outfield. You can put him at DH sometimes. And this guy, if he stays healthy, can mash. I mean, again, you look at that year he had, and he didn't have a horrible year last season, but I mean, if you go back to his Pittsburgh Pirates days, he had some incredible numbers. And so it's one of those great signings that I think we all love, because it's not going to break the bank. The Guardians will never be breaking the bank per se on a free agent. But he is a guy with tremendous, tremendous upside. And when we talk about the excitement around this team, I think Josh Bell is definitely one of those key guys.
What do you think of the rule changes?
I know what baseball is trying to do. We had to ruin the conversation bringing up Rob Manfred, but that's just, I think the guy's a bit of a clown, Rob Manfred, but, okay, now you're going the other way, trying to compensate for last year when, you didn't have much offense. So, okay, bigger bases, and you're going to ban the shift, and you got the pitch clock and all that stuff. Ultimately, I think what this boils down to, in addition, and look, those may help the game, and if it helps the game, great. I'm not I'm not an old man to the point where I'm saying, no, it's tradition, tradition, tradition. But inevitably, what I think hurts baseball, and definitely has hurt baseball over the last few years, and I'm not, just crapping all over analytics here, but we've gotten so much into launch angle. And, now all of a sudden, like you look at what the Guardians did last year, and a guy like Stephen Kwan and other guys in that lineup, they got on base. They moved guys over. Now, look, you got to be able to hit home runs. Hopefully they're going to hit more this year. That's one of the reasons, again, they signed to Josh Bell, and others are going to be taking that next step, hopefully, in their development. But ultimately, so many guys nowadays, I don't know if you guys remember on my show, I would have Brett Boone,
Yes,
who was
I do.
former all-star second baseman, love Boone. And we talk a lot during the regular season, and he would say, that's kind of the approach that these guys are learning down at the minor league level, is that, hey, if you strike out, no big deal, but, swing out of your shoes. And so it's almost like, boy, I don't want to say you've got to redo everything as far as development, but I love the way that, hey, a team like the Guardians, let's face it, they're not going to have San Diego Padres money or Dodgers money, but they have, and they can spend more. I'm not going to, certainly they can do that. But ultimately, you got to be able to zig when other teams are zagging. And I think right now, and last year especially, that's what you saw the Guardians do. I just wish, and I hope, that in addition to the rule changes, like I said, if they work, fantastic. But ultimately, the approach needs to change. Okay, you can talk about, a deadened baseball, a livelier baseball, and all this stuff, and pitch clock, and blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, what is the hitter's approach at the plate? It's changed drastically from, say, the days I mentioned when Booney played. It's changed dramatically, and I'd like to get more into what it was. That doesn't mean I don't like the long ball. I love it. But you gotta play some more, station baseball, whatever, however you want to term it. And I hope that that's going to also play into the rule changes as well.
The with this, especially with this pitch clock and stuff like that, it just seems that I know what they're trying to accomplish. Baseball, before all the hype and everything else came up with it, as far as commercialism and all that, used to be about a 2.5-hour game. And I think that's probably what they're trying to do with this clock. But I don't know if that's the way you're going to want to do it here.
Well, okay, and I agree with you. Like a lot of these are quirky and kind of whatever. But I will say this, that guys will adjust, I think. I mean, look, when now I'm curious to see. I think we all are, and this is what happens with the rule change. You can go to the NFL with this too. Like in crunch time, when it's a big game or late in a game, are they going to enforce that like you normally would, say during, second inning of game number 11 of the season? If they're going to do this, they have to be consistent. But I think that if there's a positive to come out of this, I think everybody says, oh my gosh, these guys, they're not going to be able to they'll adjust. They get paid a lot of money. And if somebody says, hey, you got to be ready in the batter's box, and you've got to be ready to go, and not, adjusting the gloves and doing this and tugging on the jersey. And, look, there's all those little idiosyncrasies and things that those guys like to do. And I don't want to see them go entirely away from that. But, hey, you know what? If it does shorten the game and it does bring more fans to it because it doesn't take as long, then I'm all for it. I've heard some people say, well, these guys are going to really have a rough time adjusting. Yeah, they will. But I think we'll see them settle in, and hopefully my hope is during the course of the season, it's really not a big talking point. If it is, then this has been a big-time failure.
Do you think it affects the hitters or pitchers more with the clock?
I would say the hitters. I think most pitchers I mean, think about this. Like if a pitcher's in a groove, now again, I think pitchers would rather get the ball and be ready to go. But oftentimes you'll see if a guy's in a groove, batter's going to step out, just try to, disrupt the rhythm. And that was part of the game. That was part of the gamesmanship in baseball. Well, now with these rules, I think that, it does affect both, but I think it's definitely going to be more about the hitter just getting ready and all of that stuff. I think for the most part, now pitchers, have their own little routine as well. But I think for the most part, when you see these guys get in a routine, and I'd be willing to bet most of them would agree with this, that they want to get it and go. They don't want you stepping out because, the momentum's going against them and whatever. Pitchers want to get it and go. So I think ultimately, while I'm a little skeptical, just because anything that Rob Manfred's behind, I get skeptical. But I think it's something that can work. So in a long-winded way, I would say it affects the hitters more than the pitchers.
Moving on to a little Ohio State football, who do you think will be the starting quarterback? Do you think it'll be Kyle McCord or Devin Brown?
Good question. Great question. I think it's going to be McCord. Now, Devin Brown's an incredible athlete, an incredible player himself, but I think this is one where, Ryan Day, and I say Ryan Day, any coach in America would feel this way. Kyle McCord's paid his dues, but I don't think it's about necessarily, I've got to, especially nowadays, it's, who can help us win. I think Kyle McCord has an understanding of the offense, and obviously he should, where, he knows exactly what Ryan Day wants to see out of his quarterback, out of his offense. So I think he's going to be given every chance. But again, like I said, things have changed now where, hey, if this guy, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but if he's not working out, they won't hesitate to make a switch if Brown gives them the better chance. But I would be surprised, guys, if Kyle McCord is not their choice.
How do you think they'll improve the defensive backs? Because they kind of struggled last year, and that concerns me going into this year because they got hit for like multiple 70 to 75 yard touchdowns just against Michigan. I get, having it happen once. Yeah, everybody makes mistakes, but you have it twice in two or three times in one game, then that's kind of a problem.
Well, I think to answer your question, I think it's a combination of scheme and I like what Knowles has done. I'll be the first to say, and I know I've taken some heat on this because they said, well, he gambled too much. Well, everybody loved that about him all season long. Now, again, you adjust your game plan week to week, and that's where against Michigan, the cover zero, and wow, you got to certainly help your guys. But I also think that, from a talent standpoint, we get so caught up these days in stars and how many stars did they have coming out and how highly ranked are they? And that's important. I mean, my buddy Ari Wasserman writes about it all the time, and he's right. But I feel like these guys, I don't know if they're Ohio State defensive backs, put it this way. Back when I was there, and believe it or not, it was, before like 1960 or after 1960, I should say, they were taught to, first of all, you're going to be physical, you're going to be aggressive, but just from a technical standpoint, a fundamental standpoint, they were taught things that I think now, and really over the last 4 or 5 years, maybe even beyond that, where a lot of that has kind of gone by the wayside. So if you combine, maybe guys that aren't fundamentally sound with taking big gambles as far as your strategy on defense with Jim Knowles, that can lead to disaster. And it doesn't always, because, oftentimes you have superior players, as Ohio State does. But you saw it in that Michigan game. The play to the sideline, I blame the guy that did. I mean, you got to make that tackle. Now they had other plays after that, but I remember that first play or that first touchdown that they had him pinned to the sideline. So if you have him, he can only go one way, and if he steps out of bounds, the play's over. Well, how the hell do you let him get by you back in the field of play? So I mean, like I said, some of that I think is technique and just how you're playing, and some of it is Jim Knowles being able to adjust that game plan week to week. I think he's going to be great, but I think it's a combination of the two.
Let's talk about that team up north for a second here.
No, you
Here,
have to?
here we go.
No. Yeah.
Do you think now that Harbaugh has beat us in the shoe, what do we got to do to change that around? We can't have him coming in here and winning all the time. I mean, crying out loud, he's beat us 2 years in a row. Do you think they're going to be able to make enough changes to actually change that around again?
Well, yeah, I do. I don't think. I mean, it's amazing how quick this narrative switched because, and you're right. I mean, when you're Ohio State and you're bringing in the players they're playing and you have the facilities and you have Ryan Day making what he makes. Yeah, there's a certain expectation level. So yeah, you want to be able to beat Michigan every year. I think a lot of us got spoiled. Now again, I'll go back to my days at Ohio State, which was in the mid '90s. They had talented teams, but John Cooper just could not find. It was the biggest mystery in the world, and it starts to become mental. It starts to become it's between the ears type thing. I think they're gonna. I'm not gonna panic because they lost 2 years in a row. I mean, granted, this past season, yeah, that's one that they're the better team. You got to do a better job. But man, you're talking about 2 years in a row, and I'm going back to the mid '90s when it was like, Michigan always ended the season for Ohio State with all those hopes and dreams. So
yeah, I can remember a lot of that myself. I've actually been following Ohio State football since the Woody Hayes days and a little bit before.
Well, you go back even further than I do. I mean, yeah. I wasn't old enough. I mean, Woody's a legend, but
I've been following the Browns since 1964. Yeah,
God bless you.
And
God bless you.
Yeah, it's been a challenge. But we can probably cover that a little bit if you want. We're talking to Mike Borman, 92.3 The Fan, I think, and
no longer with 92.3.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
Why don't you tell us? Let's do it this way. Tell us how to get a hold of you and what Twitter names and stuff like that. How does somebody get a hold of you?
You can follow me on Twitter at Chico Big Play, BIGPLAY. I have an announcement coming soon, very soon, hopefully, as far as what my next gig's going to be. But no, I've been done at the Fan, and I've certainly enjoyed my time there. But that ended back in September, and kind of tying up some loose ends right now with my next venture, and I'm really looking forward to it. That's kind of all I can say right now. But yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Chico Big Play, and we've got some announcements coming here very soon.
Well, when one door closes, others open. I've always believed in that myself.
Everything happens for a reason, right, guys?
Yep. Let's get into a different topic real quick. Let's talk about the XFL a little bit. We were talking about this a little before the show. What do you think of the XFL? What do you think of the XFL?
I'd rather talk about Michigan than I would the XFL. I'm just not, guys. I'd love to sit here and tell you, and this was a great topic back when I was on the air. A lot of guys say a lot of guys, but some of the younger guys in studio, I feel like it's more of an age thing. And I'm not saying that guys, I'm in my 40s. I'm not saying guys my age don't like it, but I feel like it's more like a younger generation thing. It's still football, and that's great, but like I need star power. And I just, when you tell me, and this was, I'm going back a couple years, but I remember someone saying like, you know, wow, Christian Hackenberg is the quarterback of, I don't even know what team it was. And,
Yeah.
you know, that's the primetime game, and he was a top pick. And I'm like, Christian Hackenberg? Like, out of Penn, I didn't even like watching him at Penn State. Why would I tune into it? It just doesn't do it for me. If you guys like it, do you guys enjoy it? Are you guys fans of it?
I do. I think I'm probably the only one.
I actually like the USFL better. It seems like their games are a little bit more together.
I think they've put, with the XFL, they've put together a better product, and I like that they got rid of the field goal. I know Pat's not a proponent of that, but I like the idea of going for 1, 2, and 3 points from different spots of the field. Like, I think that's
honestly, I didn't even know. I'll be honest with you, man. I didn't even know those were the rules for it. Like, that's how much I follow the XFL. And this is okay. Part of my reason for saying this is not only I mentioned the star power, but I'll add another one in here, and that is how long are these leagues going to last? Because as a fan, I need to know that, you know, this is, and I don't mean legit as far as talent. I mean, who am I to say that these guys are, you know, some of them former NFLers are trying to make it, and I want to see these guys succeed. I want to see them get back to the show. But, like, is this league going to be around in 2 years? Are they going to fold? Are they going to? And for me, that's why it's like I'm not going to invest my time in something until I know that it's legitimate and it's going to be around a while. And all these leagues, for the most part, are Johnny come lately. Oops, we didn't foresee this or that, and we got no money. We're closing our doors. I just, if it survives, great, and maybe I'll tune in a little bit more. But the combination of no star power, and usually they fold after 2 or 3 years, it just doesn't do it for me.
Where do you stand on? Hold on, Pat. Sorry for cutting you off, but on the amount of access during games they give, and by that I mean they're interviewing players in the heat of the moment. They have the coaches mic'd up so you can actually hear them calling plays, and then the analysts can dissect the play call. What do you think of that?
I think they have to do that, and I'm not. I mean, let's face it. It's going to be from rule changes or gimmicky is going to sell to a certain audience. Mm-hmm. Now, I call that. I mean, it's. I guess it's cool. Like, yeah, you'll get somebody in the heat of the moment, but 9 times out of 10, you know, they don't do that at other levels or in the NFL, obviously, for good reason. I think this is, again, other XFL, USFL, whatever it is. Hey, we need to have another selling point because, again, like for someone like me, star power isn't going to get it done. Christian Hackenbergs of the world aren't going to get it done for me. So, I mean, maybe some will tune in because, you know, they're going to talk to this guy in the heat of the moment. And I'm just speaking for me. I want to be clear. I know that there are many people that love it, and that's fine. To each his own. But I'm just not a big fan at all.
We had
when it comes to, hold on, let me just finish this, and I'll let it get right to you, Pat. The FCC violations, because I see a lot where they have these players mic'd up, heat of the moment, and they're cussing all the time, and that's getting over the air. Like, I don't see, that's a huge danger for the network, isn't it?
Who cares about the FCC? No.
Yeah.
See, I say that now that I'm not in radio now. So, I mean, yeah, I guess it is. And again, that's another thing. Like, it just, it feels fake to me. I mean, the football's real. The talent is, these guys are working their asses off trying to get to that next level. But it's just the combination of everything to me just makes it feel gimmicky. I want to hear what Pat has to say real quick. Go ahead, Pat.
Okay, quickly, we do have another guest that's joined us. Good evening, Mr. Telich.
Hi there, guys. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Hear you fine.
Wait a minute, guys. I got it. I don't want to take. I can't be taking Telich's time. No way.
Come on, Chico. You take all the time you want, my man. I respect you. So just keep doing your thing, my brother. Keep doing your thing.
Yeah.
Thanks, JT. Last question, because I want to make. I didn't realize JT was fine. Yeah, he's. Come on, man. You're talking about a legend here. So I want to get out of the way, but if you guys got something else, and then I'll
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you can hang with us and keep
Sure.
it on the conversation. The one point I was going to bring up, we had discussions on this show weeks ago about both of the XFL and the USFL actually becoming like a farm team for the NFL. It seems like it's headed in that direction. What do you think, Chico?
I mean, I'll answer that with a question. Does that make it more entertaining for like someone like yourselves who enjoy it? Because I just feel ultimately it's just too. It just feels too gimmicky to me. And I mean, obviously, the best athletes, the best guys that are coming out from where? They're coming from college and top programs. And now again, it's a great story when a guy's able to make it. I mean, that's what it's all about. I certainly would, love to see and hear and read about guys that, hey, they got a second chance or maybe a first chance and they took it and ran with it. But I don't know. I mean, I'd have to see how that goes. I don't know. Telich would be a great one to ask about this too. I just feel like it's, And like I said, is it going to be around in a couple of years? Or is it going to fold? Because I'm not going to invest my time in something that I don't think is going to be around very long.
As far as the way I look at a lot of that, it's kind of like watching the Indians farm teams. You've got two great teams there. You got the Rubber Ducks down here in Akron, and you got the Lake County Captains. It's kind of like, would that be interesting to you? It's going to be interesting to some, I would imagine. And eventually some of those players could end up in the big leagues.
I'd much rather, I'll watch minor league baseball all day long over the XFL or USFL.
Yeah.
All day long.
Anyway, let's.
Hey guys, I'm going to step aside. You got to talk with John Telich here. I'm going to.
Thank you so much for joining, Mike. We really appreciate your time.
Yes, Mike. Thank you for coming in.
Really enjoy it.
Hopefully,
all the best, Chico.
John, you too, buddy. It's good talking to you. Hopefully, talk to you again real soon, bud.
Hopefully,
okay,
hopefully you can. When we get a chance, maybe we can all get together again.
Okay, that sounds good. I appreciate it, fellas. Thank you.
Okay.
See you, buddy.
Now
Okay,
we have.
now we got a
I
big
want to
intro
do this.
to do.
Eric, you just behave yourself, boy.
No, I'm the host. I run this show.
You think.
Technically, you produce
You
it,
think.
but okay. With that, we want to introduce our next guest from Fox 8 and Fox 8 Friday Night Touchdown, John Telich. How you doing tonight, John?
Had to give you the
Hey.
Rizzo. Had to give you the
That's
Rizzo
awesome.
horn.
Hey, thanks, guys, for having me on. And, it's really been a pleasure listening, like the last 15 minutes or so ago, you guys talking to Chico. Chico's one of those guys that's been in the business who I always felt is a top-tier talent, and I like to see him have opportunities as such. So hopefully whatever he has up his sleeve that he wasn't going to break on your show tonight, hopefully it's great news for him, and I wish him nothing but the best. But thanks for having me on, guys. I know we played a little tag here for a while, right, Eric? But
Yeah.
we got her done, and it's a pleasure to be on. So hope you guys are doing well.
Speaking of new ventures, I saw
Yeah.
you have one. Tell us
Yes,
a little bit about that.
Yes, I do. I actually have had two ventures going on since I retired, Eric. I had a podcast that I started prior to my retirement, called Tellage Talks, which is still on all the platforms. So you can look at any of the episodes I've done. I've done 82 of them. The most recent one was this week. I interviewed Rob Ostrom, who's a huge sports fan here in Northeast Ohio, but he got morbidly obese to the point where he was almost 500 pounds. He lost 245 of those pounds. And had he not done that, I'm certain that he may have met his maker a bit too early, go to sleep and not wake up. He wanted to walk his daughter down the aisle one day, so he took every step that he could. He did bariatric surgery. And so he's a success story. He's my most recent pod. I put one out each week. So I've done 82 of those prior to the pandemic, took a break during the pandemic, and then picked it up after I retired full time from Channel 8 last February. The second venture, which was just announced recently, and I'm excited about, and I really got to start doing my homework because I watched them from afar for a year, although I wasn't at the ballpark like I used to be when I was working day to day for Channel 8. And that's the Guardians. I'm on the Press Play Podcast Network, and we'll be debuting the Guardians of the Land MLB podcast. I'm taking over as the host, and I'll be doing it this year. So every couple of weeks, I'll have an episode, catch up on how the team's doing, maybe some interviews, those types of things, and maybe break down aspects of the play of the Guardians and go from there. So a couple of exciting ventures that always were going to keep my fingers into the media. When I made my plans to walk away from Channel 8 in early 2022, my boss always said, we want you back every fall to be one of the guys on the show, the Friday Night Touchdown show, and I'm going to keep doing that until they wheel me out of there years from now. As long as they have me, I will do it. So those are a couple of things that's going on. So it's been pretty exciting for an old retired guy.
So let's start off with some a little bit of high school sports talk.
Okay.
So, do you think there was a case like 2 weeks ago where there was a high school girls basketball game that the 85 to like 1 or whatever that ended 85 to 1? Do you think after a certain point that team, the coach of that team that was winning, should have been like, you know what, we're gonna call this because, or they should have gotten with the other team's coach and said, you know what, continuing this is just risking injury.
Well,
you know?
I know, as you guys are aware, in high school football, you have the running clock. And, of course, now that we expanded in high school football to 16 teams per region, making the playoffs in each of the 7 divisions, you do have some of those real lopsided mismatches in round 1, and that's where that running clock comes into play. In basketball, I would have made, the second half of that game, sped the clock up somewhat. The ball goes out of bounds, the clock keeps on going. And then sometimes you just hope, guys, that the coach of the winning team shows a bit more humanity and backs off a bit and gives more opportunities for the other team's players to have some positive plays. I know there's the other side of the coin where people would say, hey, if you put your team on the floor, they should play their best as far as they can. And if they get beaten by a huge margin, they should learn how to handle that and be better the next time. I can see both sides of the coin, but it's not fun for anybody to watch that. Would you enjoy sitting there watching that type of game? No, I wouldn't. No. And so, there has to be a bit of humanity coming from the coach who is the on that winning side of that big lopsided victory.
Did you see that in this tournament that they're not going to have shot clocks because some of the teams in the tournament don't have shot clocks because they're small schools.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I would like it to be uniform throughout throughout the state.
The
or
example
whatever
I
federation. What's that, Eric? I'm sorry.
My bad. I didn't mean to talk over you. But I heard like there's the smaller like Wayne County schools that can't afford shot clocks. So because of those and other counties, but they were using the example of Wayne County, what I heard. So, but what do you think? Should all schools somehow raise money to have a shot clock, or what?
I'm in favor of the shot clock. I know, it does kind of, not having a shot clock does kind of help, level the playing field, if you will, the playing court. But I'm in favor of having a shot clock. I just think it makes the game better. So if there is one instituted in such a manner, it should be for everyone. And no matter how, what the size of your school is, it should be a uniform kind of a thing. That's how I would approach it going forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree there.
It makes sense. It makes sense.
Oh yeah, definitely.
All right, let's change subjects here. We would completely be remiss if within the time that we've got left with you, let's talk Browns.
Go ahead and take a knife and start piercing my eyes, both of them. No, go right ahead. No, I'm obviously joking.
I'm actually.
And so, what angle on the Browns do we want to talk about, guys?
First, I want to throw out my unpopular opinion because I saw this report yesterday about trading Nick Chubb.
Oh yeah,
I say do it if you could get a second round pick, because then you could package if you get a second round pick next year, you could package that pick and next year's second round to get back up into the first round.
Right.
But go ahead.
Well, I would not be in favor of it, Eric. I just think he's a transcendent type of a talent, and I'd want him on my team to maximize my offensive game plan, if you will, to make things easier on Deshaun, to make things easier on everybody around. You know all the metrics about him, yards after contact, and how dynamic a player he is. If it were an average run-of-the-mill running back, certainly he wouldn't bring the return, but I would consider, making some kind of a trade. But I want Nick Chubb on my team whenever and if ever that Lombardi Trophy is being hoisted by Kevin Stefanski or whoever happens to be the coach of the Cleveland Browns at the time, if and ever. You had mentioned earlier in the show, I heard you talking about covering the Browns or being a follower of the Browns since 64. I was an 11-year-old kid in 64, went to the title game with my father.
Oh,
and
awesome.
That is the last chance or last time that we ever had a title in this town in football. And I would love for this town to experience what it would be like to have the glory days be a year in and year out type of an affair with your football team. And let's be perfectly honest, it really hasn't been the case since the Bernie years. And it's been quite a debacle since 1999. And I think one of the reasons for the Browns getting to the playoffs a couple of years ago was a talent like Nick Chubb. He continues to be one of the best in the game. I just love him, and I want him on my Browns team as long as humanly possible to get the most out of his abilities.
Do you think Stefanski is the right coach to take them to the promised land?
Well, I think I thought he did a good job last year. He didn't adjust as well when Deshaun came back, but I thought he did a great job with Jacoby and their offense for the most part. Sure, he had hiccups. Sure, he made some puzzling moves at the end of games on a couple of occasions. But offensively, yes. But overall, as a head coach going forward, to be the guy to lead them to a title, I really think it all hinges on how well he can. His biggest project to date and his most important one is how he can transition Deshaun from the first 6 games of his Browns career last year to the next 5, 10, however many years that he plays here as a member of the Cleveland Browns. It's very important for him to make Deshaun's abilities as unique as possible that they may be, as transcendent as possible, to make the Browns a difficult offense to contend with that can put games away. And I'm excited to see what they come up with. I don't know how successful it'll be, but I'm excited to see what they come up with, because I think we got a middling kind of an effort or result in those 6 games that we saw from him. And I give him I'll give him the leeway since he had not played in 700 days or so. So I think Stefanski has shown offensively he can get it done. How well he commands the team, how well Bubba does as the special teams guy, how well, of course, Schwartz does on the defensive end of things. A lot of things. This is a really important offseason. Obviously, I'm speaking to the choir. You guys know that. But it's very important offseason that these guys have.
Do you think DPJ is a legitimate number 2 receiver?
I think he's good enough there. I thought he can make more leaps in terms of his productivity. I like the overall skills that he has. He's big, he's strong. He goes up, fights for balls, and comes down with them. He's got enough speed. We did see what he could do on special teams. Gives them another option. I'm sure maybe Ford will get more opportunities in special teams this coming year. So yeah, I like him. I mean, that's, one of those picks that they're going to have to be more and more successful with those 3rd round and 4th round picks, or even in the case of this past year, I thought the youngster Emerson was a real good, early-ish round pick, but not a high draft pick. So that's where Barry's going to be under the most pressure or scrutiny, how well he can hit those 3rd, 4th, 5th round picks.
What do you think as far as the next moves Cleveland's going to have to make in free agency and whatever? You think they're going to go after a wide receiver?
I haven't really scouted. I hit my wire there. Apologize. I haven't really scouted, the crop of free agents per se out there. But first and foremost, they do need to be more dynamic in that room. I don't know how well the youngster Bell is going to develop. Looks like he has all the tools. How much, Deshaun's creativity will come into play for people like DPJ, or obviously for Coop, how well he transitions the offense as they go forward. But, I'd like to see them pep things up on the receiver end of things. And, of course, defensive tackle seems to me to be a huge area where they got to go and get some help.
That's what I've thought too. Did you happen to catch the Saturday Night Live with Kelsey last week?
It's so weird. I love both the Kelsey brothers, and I recall covering both. I remember Jason as a bulldozing running back, and I remember him as a very tough defensive player, just one of those guys you would not want to mess with on the high school level. And I can remember being on the sidelines when Travis was playing quarterback and him getting lit up by the head coach. And then I remember him playing basketball as well. I saw the promos for it. I only saw one clip of his opening monologue, and then at the end where I think something got cut off. That's been one of the things I wanted to check out this week, but I just had so many other things going on. And speaking of the Kelsey brothers, their podcast is spectacular. The In the Heights podcast. I don't know if you've listened to it. It's fun podcasting, if you will. They have great guests, obviously. They have exposure or ability to get some of the top people in sports, like their buddy Pat Mahomes and those types of things. But that's real fun entertainment. And Travis is not a stranger to the TV thing. Didn't he do a show about 6 years ago where it was he was searching for a girl to date or something?
Yeah, they were talking about that on the show.
Were they? Okay,
yeah.
Okay, I didn't hear. All right, yeah. No, he's really talented. And you know what was really cool, and they were talking about it on the pod, the brothers, was how cool Super Bowl week was mostly for their mom, Donna, how she was really the queen of the Super Bowl and how everybody in the media world wanted a piece of her and how she delivered, and how they also, build up their father and all the great stories about the two brothers fighting each other in the kitchen, and butter knives being pulled and stuff like that. Must have been a fun household up there in Cleveland Heights with those two brothers growing up. And Lord knows they made enough money to feed both of them, because those are two impressive physical specimens, for one being the top center in the league and the other guy being, a future Hall of Famer as a tight end. It's a pretty unique set of brothers. So I will look at that stuff. I haven't had a chance to see much of Travis's SNL thing.
It is well worth a watch. It is well worth a watch.
I will. We'll check it out.
Go ahead, Eric.
So getting off the field a little bit, what do you think about the whole stadium thing? Do you think they should build a dome, or put a dome on the existing stadium, leave everything where it is?
I think they should build. They should do what they should have done, but the time constraints kept him from really delving into building the best structure possible that would potentially have a cover on it. I'm not against it. I grew up in Cleveland. I certainly remember all the Browns games I went to in the cold, all the ones I covered at the old stadium, the great atmosphere of beating the Jets in double overtime, the beat-up old stadium, the atmosphere there, the thundering fans, close to 80,000. I love that, and I didn't mind, being out in the frigid cold. I covered Red Right 88. That was the first playoff game I covered back in 81 in January, and I don't think I've warmed up from that. But the bottom line is Cleveland wants to be an emerging city of the Midwest, and we're getting more and more play for all the different events that we've been able to host here, whether it be the Women's Final Four or the NFL Draft. The Cleveland Sports Commission's fantastic in all they do. It would be spectacular if they could build a facility that is not just for the football team, but can be used for mammoth events, whether it's a huge concert for a world-renowned musician or what have you, or obviously staging big events like an NFL draft or NFL combine, or certainly a Final Four or Super Bowl, dare I say. So I'm all for, going big and getting the best structure possible. And it has to be the Hasms have to have a big chunk of the cost. They have to foot a big chunk of the cost, but they can't do it alone, I don't suspect, or nor will they want to. So it has to be a community-wide, civic-wide project to get something like this built. What they did, like in Minnesota, that's an amazing structure. And, of course, SoFi speaks for itself out there in Los Angeles. It would be nice to have something like that. And I'm not such a purist that I need to have my football outside, where dirt's on the uniforms, because they don't play on dirt that much anymore anyway. And I'd be more in favor, guys, of just building a world-class facility that maybe it's got a roof, but you could take the roof off, pull it back on occasion. But for the most part, have the ability to stage fantastic events that have nothing to do with football.
Don't you find it a little shocking that they want to get rid of that stadium? It was only built in 1999 or 98.
Yeah, 99 was the first game they played when they got killed by the Steelers, if I recall, opening night. But you can also, other factors come into play. Look at what we thought, or the powers that be in the city of Cleveland thought they were going to get when they built the Coliseum, and that was only used for 20 years. It went from 74. I think Sinatra was the first act in it, and then the Cavaliers played, and the Miracle of Richfield, and all that stuff. I used to love going out there. It was inconvenient as heck for me to go from Channel 8 all the way out to Richfield just to be able to see maybe 2/3 of the first half of a Cavs game before I would have to turn around and race back to the station to get ready for the nightly news. Back then, we used to do it at 11 o'clock when we had a 6 and 11, and we were CBS. And so that was only used for 20 years. And they thought things would blossom around it. They thought that the whole area there in Richfield would blow up, and then, of course, it would make more development between that area and Akron, and it just didn't happen. It was just kind of like a place to go see the Cavs play or other sports, and then you went back home. There was nothing around it. But in Cleveland, I see the need for a big, exciting new structure for them, and I also see the need for them to continue to try to develop the lakefront. It's incredible that we have one of the 5 Great Lakes, and it's right there, and yet we have an airport on one part of it, and we have a stadium at the other. I'd like to see this, if they build a new stadium, it be somewhere away from the lake so we can further maximize the beauty and the enticement of having one of the Great Lakes right there at your shores.
From what I was understanding, the Haslams have already asked the city of Cleveland for some of the property. And
yeah, I had heard that too, and I'd heard some of the areas. There was one of the proposals was where the current FBI place is next door to Channel 3. That was one of the places I heard. Also, the old Central Market area is now where Progressive Field is. But then if you're talking about by the post office in that area, and then we've heard more and more of some land that's down there at the intersection of 77 and Rockside Road, near where like the Top Golf structure
that
is.
Would be an interesting place.
Yeah, that would be. I mean, I lived and worked in Buffalo for 2 years. So in 1978 to 80, before I came to Channel 8. And so I covered the Bills those 2 years. They sucked, by the way, but that's okay. They got better. But Orchard Park was where the Bills stadium was, Rich Stadium, and it continues to be the spot for the Buffalo Bills. I know they have plans for a new stadium and all that, and that's all well and good, but it was never even gave it one thought about having to go out to Orchard Park to cover the Bills or go to a practice. Not a big deal at all. So, we go out to Berea all the time and to cover the Browns. So if there's a stadium somewhere near there or in the burbs, as it were, that's fine. If you can find a place that's downtown, that's even more sexy in my mind, because then you could have huge events taking place right in your downtown, and you still have an arena, and you still have one of the best ballparks, I still believe, guys, to this day. Even though it debuted, back in '94, it feels to me like one of the best ballparks in baseball, and it's always been one of my favorite parks to go to. Even the ones on the road, even the historic ones I've gone to, like Wrigley and Fenway and those types of places.
Do you think there will be outrage if they did move it to Independence? Because from fans who think that it should stay in the downtown area. Do you think there will be a ton of outrage?
I don't know if there would be outrage. I think the biggest takeaway fans would have from it, I think, Eric, is if the price tag is reasonable, if the fans are not getting gouged to help pay for this thing, so there's still going to be some extension of a sin tax or some kind of creative way to help with the financing of this. There'll be some state money, I'm sure. There, of course, certainly will be the Haslam's money as well. But no, I don't think that there would be the outrage that you speak of. But we have to really kind of think again about how, cities are structured as well, or how people get around. We're so married to the car. We're so married to the interstate. And I know it's weird saying it just weeks after a train derailment that was quite costly and nearly catastrophic, or still could be in that category. But we have to use other modes of transportation. I don't know if you guys heard of, they're thinking of bringing the Cuyahoga Valley railroad line further north, because it just goes up to Independence. They want to bring it up into the city. I'm all for anything that kind of takes the emphasis away from the car per se. I'm all for everything we're doing in the city of Cleveland, which, by the way, the bike enthusiasts are feeling better and better about what they're doing to make it more of an ease of travel for someone who just has a bicycle, or some of these, now you see a lot of these, quote, electric bikes that are like pedal assisted, or have some juice to kind of get you up over a tough area. Anything to, I don't know if we're ever going to be like the Netherlands, I don't want to be that crazy, but anything to put more emphasis on people getting around easier than just having that love affair with the car.
As far as
Could you see them putting in a subway system?
Well, I mean, we have RTA. I don't know about that, but I think RTA needs to be enhanced. I think RTA could use some more infrastructure. I don't know the usage rate of it. I haven't delved into those figures. It might be a neat little project for me to look into. But it would be obviously would be something to consider. But it's a question worth looking at, I think.
Did you see the grades from the NFLPA with the Browns?
Yeah, I did. They were. I think the facilities. They moved the weight room, if I recall, because of the pandemic. Moved it into the Casey Coleman Fieldhouse, which to this day, by the way, guys, since I worked with Casey and we were such great friends, for them to initially, thanks to Randy Lerner, name that field house after Casey was a wonderful thing, and I was so proud that they did it for my buddy who's now been deceased since 2006. So I thought it was great that they had his name on the exterior of the building. There was a scoreboard there that had his name, but then that was taken off the outside of the building. And the only way you're in the Casey Coleman Fieldhouse is if you actually go inside it, and there is signage inside. I wish there was something still outside that has Casey's name on it. But that being said, I'm all for the facilities. They're doing the best they can. They want to make that a whole campus, kind of like what Jerry Jones has with the Star in Texas, where they train and the facilities that they have. So they bought up some adjoining land. They expanded the footprint last year, but the players didn't like, I guess, that they moved the weight facility, if you will, into the field house, and that didn't get very good grades. But the strength coach got good grades. It was an anonymous survey. I saw some other teams, like obviously the Commanders, got walloped pretty good on it, and those types of things keep the teams honest. And I do think the environment does make for a great product, or helps make a better product.
I guess the Haslams bought up almost the whole neighborhood adjacent to the facility. There's only 2 families that are refusing to sell their property.
Yeah, that's been kind of an ongoing thing for them, but that's part of their plan to try to make it more of have a lot of the team housed there. I know there are some individuals that are up at the stadium, but have as many people in the organization using the facilities in Berea. Hey, but I can recall, when I first started, they had a cramped little weight room in the near Finney Stadium in Berea at Baldwin Wallace. They used part of Baldwin Wallace's buildings for their headquarters, if you will, and for their their practices and what have you. They had one field. They didn't have much of a footprint to train, but they got it done, and they had good teams in those 80s that I can recall. And so the facilities help, but it's the Jimmies and the Joes rather than those, the X's and the O's, or the facilities for that matter.
We're gonna start wrapping up, but before we do, Nick or Pat, do you have any questions?
Let's let Nick go. Go
What's
ahead.
the Browns record going to be this year?
Hey, how you doing?
Fantastic.
Fantastic. Thanks for the question. I think it's going to be a successful year for how Watson and the offense go, and so I'm excited about the prospects for that. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Schwartz transitions this defense. They really need to shore up that defensive line. It can't just be Miles and those 2 young defensive ends that need a lot of work. But I will be very optimistic and And I think if they go 10-7, I think that's a good year. How about yourself?
I was thinking the same thing. I think a lot of it depends upon like how free agency goes, and if we can fill some of the holes on the roster. I think there's no reason why we shouldn't be a playoff team with the talent that we have, and with Deshaun the whole year.
Yeah, and I thought that would have been the case a year ago. I'll be honest with you guys, though. I mean, as much as I'm talking about Watson right now, and it's been months since they acquired him. It's been a year, but I think it was March. Yeah, obviously this time a year ago that happened, and I was not a fan of it when they did it. I was just the whole thing going on down there in Texas. It just left a bad taste in my mouth. I just wasn't on board with it. The weirdest part was too, I was only like a month into my retirement, so when it happened, I remember sitting here on the couch, flipping through Twitter, texting a few of my buddies back at the place, and all I could think of was, those poor son of a guns, they've got to cover this thing. Like, it's going to be day in and day out, and it's really going to be stressful because it's much more than just a football story, as you came to know, because all the I-team reporters were doing stories about it, and lawyers and judges being involved in what have you. And I just, I wasn't a fan of it. But now that the dust is cleared and he is with the team, he's really a special football player. So we'll see if he can bring that out of himself this year and elevate them. And 10-7 would be pretty good. I think the division, with as long as Joey Burrow's down there in Cincinnati, that's a real tough thing. Even though the Browns have handled him fairly well for the most part, we'll see what happens. The end result with the Lamar situation in Baltimore. And the Steelers are always the Steelers. Browns fans hate to hear it, but I've always respected the Steelers all these years because they seem to do things the right way. They do things methodically. They do things within a system, and they always seem to be unified in their approach to whatever the case may be. So they're in a real tough division. That's no secret. It's not breaking news. But if they go 10-7, get themselves in the playoffs, then they just have that tough grind of just how do you get past Patrick, or how do you get past, even the Chargers, let's say, with their great young quarterback. How do you get past the Ravens? The Ravens always find a way to be near things. And then how do you beat that kid down in Cincinnati? So 10-7 would be great. Really would.
One more question before we wrap it up.
Sure.
Where do you stand on the XFL? What do you think?
Yeah, I heard you guys talking to Chico about it. What the XFL is a great story, or the USFL is a great story on the other side of the existence of the league. I don't mean I'm advocating for them not to be successful or to go away. They are what they are, and they'll move forward as long as they can be successful. But my point is that you'll see stories of a certain player that made his mark in the XFL and then became kind of like the Kurt Warner's version of coming from the Arena League and bagging groceries in a store, and then all of a sudden you're a quarterback in the NFL, and then you're a star quarterback, and then you're leading your team to the Super Bowl. I think those are the cool things. As far as the gimmicky stuff, give me all that you can. I'm serious. I like when they talk to guys. I remember like baseball all-star games when they mic'd the players, and they remember when they conversed with Frankie Lindor one time. Any of that type of stuff, I find it great because some of the best stuff that you hear on a broadcast comes from like the sidelines. Andre Knopf's as good as there is in sports, I think, as being a sideline / dugout guy or whatever you want to call him, because of the insights that he can bring or his connection with the players. And I want to see more of that. I want interviews with, like in golf, is really trying to do it now. Live Golf has boosted the PGA Tour's way of thinking about the game. And there's going to be more of this stadium connection to golf. There's going to be more of conversing with the guy prior to his first shot, prior to his approach, prior to his putt. I think that stuff just kind of spices the game up just as much as in baseball. They needed to spice things up by making it quicker, by making the bags bigger, by moving, getting the shifts back so we can just have kind of baseball the way it used to be played. So let's go with that stuff.
With the access though, as I brought up, I think you heard when we were wrapping up with Chico though, the risk of FCC violations because of not enough censorship. Which I don't know where you stand on that.
Well, first of all, there should be some kind of a delay, and so that they can catch the errant F-bomb and what have you. I'll give you a great little inside story. I was in the locker room. I was the first reporter into the locker room after the Cavs won the NBA championship, and the first guy I got was Kyrie, and I asked him about the shot he made, and he had been drinking champagne for like the last 15 minutes, so he gets a excuse for me. But we were going live back to the station in Cleveland. We were sending my interviews back live, and I think we might have had a second delay. And to this day, I'm assuming they got it because if they hadn't, I probably would have heard about it. But the first two words out of his mouth were MF and then effing. I made the shot. I saw it, I launched it, and I made that MFN shot. And so I'm all for things being as live as possible, or is living on the edge, if you will, broadcasting wise, as long as you can bleep out those things. I mean, in podcasts, you hear F-bombs all the time. I'm not a big fan of that. That's why I say, for the most part, like I do my pod, it's called Clean. There's only been one F-bomb in the 82 episodes I've done, and that was LaCharles Bentley when we were talking about, I think, dealing with certain defenses that he went up against through his early in his career. And I think he used an F-bomb, and I didn't bleep it out when I dropped the podcast. I'm all for people expressing themselves as well. But as long as you're talking FCC, like you said, Eric, there are rules. And that type of stuff, really, you could potentially lose your license.
Okay, one more question from me, then one more question for Pat.
You bet.
But do you think the miking up the coaches is too much? Like, because you're getting access to their playbook. And the other teams can watch that broadcast and see in a formation and know exactly what the team's gonna call. What do you think of that?
Well, I don't think it's going to ever come to the NFL, but for what they're trying to do now, they're probably weighing themselves. They're going up to the point where they feel it can be super inside, how you make the sausage kind of broadcasting. So that might bring more people in. So that's a good thing, but trying not to cross the line where it gives away too much. So there's a fine line they have to walk, but I don't knock them for trying it or going that way. They can always change their plays, in the second half, or they can change their terminology or what have you. But the coaches will let them know that this is not a good thing for my competitive instincts and ability to be successful. But for the most part, be as gimmicky as possible. You're a third tier, second tier league, and you're trying to get attention. So just have some fun with it. I think people kind of got to get out of their old school way of thinking.
Viewership is really good for it too. It's beating like the Sunday hockey on ABC. It's blowing that out of the water. But
well, it's football. It's still football, and this is still America. And we love our football, man.
Have you seen the changes that they've made to the Hall of Fame down here?
I have. I was down there for the St. Ed's championship game, and I know they've had the whole plans that kind of got put on hold for finishing up the whole village and that type of stuff. But everything they do there is top notch. What do you think of it, Pat?
That village is going to really be something else. They've actually brought in 2 or 3 different restaurants now that Mike, I can't think of his last name. He's going to have a restaurant there. Was it Shula or Don Shula? Was it Shula's?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Don Shula has that restaurant in Independence. It's still there. I think Shula's Steak 2 or something or other.
There's going to be 2 or 3 places like that are well-known football players that have got restaurants in that. That's going to be really pretty cool. The whole plans for that thing are going to go 2 or 3 years in advance from here. That whole area is really starting to develop really well.
Well, you got to you have to give Tom Benson a lot of credit. I mean, he was the NFL owner that stepped up and made that first big contribution, and then got on the horn to all the other owners and said, "Hey, this is our Hall of Fame. Excuse me. This is what our league strives to do. We want our greatest players to one day end up in the Pro Football Hall of Fame." So that stadium where they play the Hall of Fame game, that stadium where they induct the greatest players to ever play the game, let's make it special. So he ponied up a big check, and then everybody else fell in line. And I think also part of that was to do what you're referring to as far as, the whole village, and make it more of not just popping into the Hall of Fame and that's it for your time in Canton, Ohio. Make it more of an excursion, a time to enjoy other facilities that you see, all those great youth facilities that they have there, the fields, the competition that takes place there. Same thing they're doing in Sandusky at Cedar Point. They've got, youth sports and travel sports is so bleeping huge in America. They're only trying to capitalize on part of that. What they're doing in Canton and what they were doing in Sandusky outside of Cedar Point. More facilities for families to come and spend more than a day in the greater Canton area.
They need to do that in Cleveland.
I hear you. I 100% agree with you. And we have great areas. I mean, me being a guy that runs the trails all the time, we have the greatest set of metro parks anywhere in the country. And I know the people that run the metro parks are fantastic, and we need to accentuate those assets we have in our city more and more than just saying, oh, there's some nice places where people walk and hike.
John, I got to tell you, I've been a longtime fan of you.
I've
watched you probably since the 80s when you were on the news and that. It's been great talking to you, man.
Oh, likewise, man. Thank you.
It's been a lot of fun. I unfortunately got to turn it over to Eric for him to do his final spiel. You may want to listen to this though, because all
right, I'll hang on for Eric's spiel.
It's got a pretty cool ending to it. Nick, good seeing you too, even though we didn't get to you much. There's always next time.
Hi,
Glad
Nick.
to help out any way I can. This is a really, really good podcast. This was an awesome job with both guests, just questions. Like, even if I was just sitting back, I was just taking it all in. I had a front row seat for it.
Glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And John, you're welcome back anytime, John. Just
all right, you know
get
where
a hold
to
of
find
us. Have a good one. And by the way, wait, one last thing, Eric. How do people get a hold of you? John? Twitter addresses, whatever.
I'm on all the social medias. I'm John Telich 8 on Twitter. I'm John Telich, all lowercase, on Instagram. And if you want to listen to Telich Talks, the podcast, that is on all the platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor.fm, iHeart. It's just Telich Talks.
Telich
Simple as
Talks.
that.
All right.
Yep.
Thanks, all right,
guys.
Mr. Eric. It's up to you now.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll be back next Tuesday at 7. With that, as the saying goes, it's time to be like a hockey player and get the puck out of here.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Pittsburgh!